Hi everyone, welcome again to Sports IQ's continued coverage of our gallant Olympians. Today we will be having our weightlifting queen, si Hidilyn Diaz, of course, Rio de Janeiro silver medalist, conditioning coach Julius Naranjo, and meron tayong special guest dito from the MVP Sports Foundation program director. I understand he handles 80% of the Olympians under the MVPSF, so Mr. Art Aro. First of all, siguro kay Hidilyn muna, no? We'll start right away. How are you? How are your preparations? And kumusta yung feeling mo going into Tokyo?
Hi. Sa ngayon, yung anxiety nandun pa rin kasi nga may test kami before going to Tokyo. Pero ready na ako kasi ni-ready ako ng Team HD and with the support of MVP Sports Foundation. So, ayun, pagdating na lang sa laro, doon na makikita kung gaano ako ka-ready. So, isama niyo ako sa prayers niyo.
Ay nako, hindi mo na kailangan sabihin yan. I think everyone right now is praying for our Olympic athletes. Yun nga, tapos especially sa'yo, no? Hidilyn, from silver, you understand yung expectations sa'yo will be really very great from from people. No? Kumusta to? Aside from yung anxiety ng mga tests and everything, how are you dealing with the pressure of being a silver medalist going into Tokyo?
Siguro alam ni Coach Julius yan, alam din ni Sir Art kung gaano ka taas yung pressure na binigay sa akin, gano'n, no? Pero, ayun nga, swerte ako na nandyan ang Team HD. Kasi, may mga time na parang nagbe-breakdown ako, pero nandyan ang Team HD para to assure me na nandun pa rin kami, on track pa rin, nandun pa rin yung progress nandun pa rin. Kaya lang minsan, may mga time talaga na nagbe-breakdown talaga ako. May mga time na parang ang taas ng anxiety. May mga time na hindi ako nakakatulog ng maayos dahil sobra talaga yung pressure na nararamdaman ko. Pero sa ngayon, good thing na may Team HD na tumutulong sa akin. Tapos, may sports psychologist. Tapos, dagdag din dito ang nag-yoga na din ako para mabawasan para makapag relax ako. Kasi nga sobrang taas ng pressure. Then syempre sobrang taas ng pressure yung hiningi ko rin sa, 'di ba, parang sabi ko hindi kasi sabi ko na hindi lang pwedeng manalo lang kami. Kailangan ng preparasyon. Good thing with preparation towards Tokyo, nandyan nga yung Team HD, nandyan din ang MVP Sports Foundation na tumulong sa amin. So medyo magaan ang journey ngayon towards Tokyo 2020 Olympics.
Great to hear, no? Coach Julius, are you responsible for this bagong yoga ni Hidilyn?
Unfortunately, no, I'm not. I'm not responsible for the yoga. I did try it, but
cool.
Yeah, it was a little hard for me, actually, believe it or not.
But Coach Julius, no, when sinasabi nga ni Hidilyn, no, that she sometimes has all these anxieties and everything, and then the team comes to her help and everything. From on your part, because you can't be just a strength and conditioning coach all throughout. How do you help her deal with this with the mental and emotional preparation for the Olympics?
Well, I mean, I think for a lot of us on the team, we wear many hats, and I think the way we had to adjust, especially with the postponement of the Olympics, is try to cater the training to adjust to how her mindset is for the day. So basically, we don't want to put too much pressure. So it's our job to alleviate as much of the pressure that's put on her, and basically just allow her to be who she is. Because I think what this pandemic really taught us was sometimes when we're in really high pressure situations, we need to adjust. We need to find ways. And I think the Filipino in us is just being resilient. I mean, just with our culture and how we've been raised and what we've dealt with through our lives, it just kind of all comes together. And this pandemic was that test, was one of those tests. And I think what we had to really do was to find happiness in the little things, change our perspective, change our mindset, to adjust, to kind of shift our focus. I mean in the beginning of the pandemic and beginning of the lockdown, it was very easy for us to get a little depressed, a little bit down. So we just had to tune her training to make it more fun and just make it more enjoyable. And of course, any other things that she had to do, we of course took the liberty of ensuring that we took that upon ourselves to make sure that she doesn't have to worry about it. So that was one of some of the things that we had to do.
Yeah, I can relate to finding victories in little things kasi before there's so many things that you could choose to ignore, no. Ngayon ultimo may tumubo lang sa garden mo na maliit na plant, sobrang tuwa ka na, 'di ba? Parang ganun yung dating ng ano, no, you really celebrate those little victories, no. Speaking of help at the time of the pandemic, MVP Sports Foundation has been very supportive of its athletes, no, and I understand more so during the pandemic. Mr. Aro, can you describe the extent of the foundation's help to these athletes, especially for our Olympians, because it's been an extraordinary preparation period for our Olympians, and so um, how did MVPSF also adjust? I'm sure you also had to adjust when it came to helping out the athletes. No? So, what were the major adjustments that the foundation did for the Olympians?
Um, we all know, no, na medyo hirap lahat
Mhm.
ng government agencies in terms of responding to the pandemic, no, early on
Mhm.
in the pandemic. And there was a big realignment that happened, no, from all the government agencies to fight the pandemic.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, PSC was one of the most affected in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
budget. So
Mhm.
talagang it was it was a downer for
Mhm.
most of the athletes, especially for the Olympic hopefuls, no, and particularly Heidi, because she was stuck in Malaysia, no, and coming into 2020, we actually had a very comprehensive program already prepared for Hidilyn leading towards the 2020 Olympics.
Yeah.
And what happened then was when the pandemic hit, we did a realignment of the budget that was supposed to go through various tournaments that
Mhm.
Hidden was supposed to participate in.
Mhm.
Since she was stuck in Malaysia, um, she had to cover her living expenses there, no? Yung rent ng bahay niya, yung electricity, yung water, their local transportation, their meals, basically, no? Yung kanilang living expenses sa Malaysia. So we did the realignment. We didn't add any more to the budget of Hidilyn of 2020 kasi kami din sa MVP Sports Foundation, we had problems also in terms of our
Mhm.
cash position. So we really did have to do a major realignment of our budget in terms of
Mhm.
the sports that we would prioritize. And one of them is IT.
Mhm.
So we sat down together with Hidilyn and her team. We identified what are the cost items that they need to cover during their entire 2020 calendar from January until December of 2020. So that's what we did. We sat down with them. We identified these cost items. And buti naman, fortunately, that the budget was enough to cover for her and her teams, no, kay Coach Julius and their foreign coach, Coach Gao, for the whole of 2020.
Mhm.
So similar to weightlifting, that's what we also did, no, for ABAP. Tuloy-tuloy yung support namin sa ABAP. We all know, no, na yung allowances din ng boxers from the PSC was temporarily put on hold. So kami naman sa MVP Sports Foundation, we talked to the NSA heads, no, we talked to Sir Ed, to Mr. Vargas, we told them na baka pwedeng ayuda ang bigay din natin sa mga boxers. So ganun din yung ginawa namin for skateboarding, ganun din yung ginawa namin for rowing. Also for Kaloy, actually, we met briefly with Kaloy because his Olympic Solidarity Scholarship from the IOC was temporarily put on hold also. So they were having problems, no, sila ni Coach Mune, in terms of their cash flow then also. So we supported GAP also during the pandemic. So tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung support talaga ng MVPSF.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Art Aro. Sa sinasabi nga ni sinasabi nga ni Ed Picson from ABAP, iba talaga when you have a private sponsor helping out kaysa yung gobyerno lang lagi, no? So talagang yung private public partnership importante talaga for everything, especially sa sports, no? And I'm sure this is going to go a big help, no? Hidilyn, let's talk about the Olympics. Kasi yung we are like sa lahat ng Team Philippines, kasi ikaw yung veteran na sa Olympics. This is your 4th Olympics, but this is the first time you will be competing without an audience, no? I mean, siguro maliit na bagay dahil hindi naman tayo yung home team or whatever, no? Pero iba rin kasi yung nagpe-perform ka na may crowd, iba rin yung atmosphere. What are you expecting going into Tokyo na ganito yung klaseng Olympics natin?
Sa totoo lang, medyo malungkot. Siyempre, nawala ng audience, walang mag-cheer ng Philippines. Tapos pag good live lang. Pero masaya pa rin ako. Masaya ako kasi siyempre natuloy. Kasi lahat ng atleta na parang lahat ng mga Olympian na nag-qualify, gusto lang namin na sana matuloy na to, makapag-perform kami. Kasi hindi namin alam kung kailan ulit, kung next Olympics, kung di ba kung ma-postpone, so may lakas pa ba kami? So mas okay na yun na kahit walang audience, at least matutuloy at may pakita natin kung gaano kagaling ang Pilipino. Pero siguro yung good thing about here sa Olympics Tokyo 2020, kasama ko ang Team HD. Yung buong team nandito. So sobrang thankful ako sa POC. Kasi sinama nila lahat ang Team HD. So medyo yung anxiety ko mabawas na. Although, alam mo naman, di ba, parang pagdating mo doon, before pa lang nga kami pupunta sa Olympics, magte-test na kami for 3 consecutive days. Tapos pagdating doon, magte-test ulit kami halos everyday. So, pero hirap, thankful pa rin ako. Sobrang hirap, pero thankful kami na matutuloy yung Olympics. Sobrang laking ginhawa ito sa aming mga atleta. Lalong-lalo na sa Team HD. At sa MVP Sports Foundation din.
Grabe, no? Kasi,
grabe kasi 5 years din. 5 years din yung preparasyon.
Tsaka, grabe yung anxieties nga, yung sinasabi mo ng mga athletes, na they're all been looking forward to I think athletes all over the world na looking forward sila, tapos andyan yung time na matutuloy pa ba o hindi? Matutuloy pa ba o hindi? Tapos especially for sa inyo, no, kasi lalo na ikaw na nahuli ka ng lockdown sa ibang bansa, no, far away from home. So napaka-valuable talaga ng sinasabi mong yung support system, no. Coach, I will talk to Coach Julius. Coach Julius, you have one of the more for people who have no idea about weightlifting, mga ganun, you have one of the more informative Instagram accounts there is, no? Parang dinidescribe mo yung form, lahat ng mga athletes, dinidescribe mo what you do. How is your what is your dynamic with Coach Gao? How do you go about aligning what you believe is best for Hidilyn for Tokyo?
It's a lot of collaboration. It's a lot of communication. Coach Gao is really he teaches the Chinese technique, and Hidilyn really performs really well utilizing the Chinese technique. So a lot of the technique aspects of our training, Coach Gao really puts emphasis with that. And with that said, I use a lot of modern techniques in terms of what we do for her programming. So a lot of the times we adjust depending on what her weaknesses are. So I use a lot of modern techniques, and we try to make it work together. And we found that when we really work together to really devise the program to improve on all her weaknesses. Another thing it does is it prevents any injuries. And luckily, Coach Gao is really good at finding ways to taper the program or adjust the program in terms of intensity if there needs to be adjustments made. So it's a great collaboration, because you have the old style with the new style, and when it comes together, it makes magic. So of course, it's not as easy as it sounds, but it's really it took a lot of time. It took more than a year to really jive and to be able to understand each other, because obviously there's a language barrier.
Language barrier,
and also, yun. So I mean, it's that, and also just Google Translate's really good. So we find ways to really communicate, diba? So I mean, it wasn't easy, but we found ways to communicate. And at the end of the day, we found that good point and that way to adjust everything to make it work for Hidilyn, essentially. So it's not easy. It's really not easy, but you have to have an open mind, because if we're only set in one way, we're not able to accept change. We're not able to accept that certain aspects of our perspective and mindset in the way we train athletes needs. If it's just fixed in one way, there's no room for improvement, because it's only set in stone. So I think just being able to tweak and being able to adjust according to what fits best for Hidilyn was, I think, what really allowed us to get to where we are today. So.
All right. Denison has a question.
Curious lang ako, just to follow up on what Coach Julius mentioned earlier. Sabi niya there's a lot of collaboration that's happening. So, of course, on the technical aspect, yan sila Coach Gao, Coach Julius, diba? But the other thing that's equally important when it comes to preparations ng mga athletes, as a sports writer covering, alam naman natin yan kahit sa mga pinamababang level, is yung nutrition. Very important. So, I'm just curious, after, you're entering yung fourth Olympic campaign mo, Hides, and then may mga changes ba? Parang how can you walk us through dun sa process ng collaboration mo on telling na, can I eat this? Mga ganyan, yung mga, kung mapihili ka pa ba with how you approach your meals ngayon, considering na you have a full-scale team behind your back.
Okay. Naalala ko nung 2008, 2012, wala akong sports nutritionist that time. Kumakain lang ako ng junk foods. Kahit ano nandiyan kakainin ko. Wala akong control. The 2016, nag-start na ako mag-diet. Pero more on galing sa chef yon. So, yung pagkain hindi talaga as in yung naaayon kung ano yung kailangan ko. Kasi ngayon, nakilala ko si Miss Jeanette Aro 2017. Naging coach ko siya sa nutrition noong 2017. Pero sa totoo lang, nung una, medyo nahirapan ako mag-adjust. Alam ni ma'am yan, hindi ako agad-agad naniniwala. Alam niya yan. Then, hindi, syempre ganun ang elite athlete. Kahit si Julius, alam niya yan na it takes 8 months before ako maniwala na magaling siya. Totoo yan. Ganon din sa nutrition na although sinusunod ko na si Ma'am Jeanette 2017, 2018, pero sa totoo lang, yung talagang sineryoso ko yung diet ko, ngayon lang April. Talagang, nung April, talagang nakuha ko yung weight ko without, hindi ko na kailangan mag-sauna. Nakuha ko agad. Tapos ngayon, on weight ako. Talagang sinunod ko. Tapos ngayon, nakita ko yung improvement din ng training ko. Kasi yung training ni Coach Julius, training ni Coach Gao, at meal plan ni Miss Jeanette Aro, ay align sila. So yung training ko, for performance talaga. Talagang ang ganda ng improvement. Tapos yung body weight ko, hindi masyadong mataas. Maganda. So, nung sinunod ko talaga, ngayon, grabe yung diet ko at nagko-communicate ako kay Ma'am Jeanette, naging maganda ang performance ko.
Meron kasi nung one time before the pandemic struck, yung nandun nga, nag-training nga kayo overseas. Napansin ko, di ba, syempre lead up, akala natin mangyayari noong 2020 yung Olympics. So, nakamonitor na rin lahat ng reporters. So, natutuwa kami dun sa dynamics yung nila Ness nila Coach Jeanette, about meals. Like, oy, kumain ka na. Oy, bawal sa'yo yan. I mean, sa mga public pages nyo kasi nagsisitahan kayo na, oy, bawal sa'yo yan na. Naalala ko, kausap ko si Nesty noon, nasa Baguio siya, training. Tapos, Coach, pagbigyan mo na ako. Sabi niya, mukhang mapopostpone naman. Alam mo yung mga ganun back and forth lang na nakakatuwa lang tignan na, kumbaga, far from dun sa training ng physical, ng mental. I mean, meron ding as other front na pinagpreparean to mga elite athletes, which is yun nga, yung nutrition. Passing you back to Sir Francis. I think he's got another question.
Yan, nakasmile si Mr. Aro na disciplined lahat ng mga athletes natin, siyempre, di ba? Mr. Art, of course as a foundation, you always strive to grow, you take on learnings from one incident and then you build on them, di ba? Parang so that the foundation grows. In this Olympics, particularly you're handling most of the Olympians under the MVPSF. Ano yung greatest learning that you've picked up leading up to the Olympics that you feel can help with the growth of the foundation further?
I guess it's more of a realization actually, Sir Francis, Sir Denison, na I think I mentioned this to Hidilyn before, na elite athletes should be treated as, I compare them to high-flying executives of a very big corporation, di ba? And if you expect these high-flying executives to perform well, at their given job, whether you're a VP for marketing, you're a president, you're a CEO, you give them all the support they need. You give them the tools, di ba? You give them incentives, you give them bonuses, you give them extra allowances, you give them travel incentives, so on and so forth. And ako, personally, I don't know if you will agree with me, Sir Francis or Denison, elite athletes are the same. There is so much pressure on them, to perform well in every single competition. We're talking about elite athletes, and it makes me sad that athletes who are asking for sponsorships from private support, na binabash sila na bakit hindi ka naman masaya sa suporta ng government, We're very thankful that government is there. Ikaw na nga nagsabi, Sir Francis, diba, that public and private sectors should really come hand in hand, because the public sector really cannot handle all. How many NSAs now? I think there are 60 something NSAs na that the PSC is supporting. So talagang hirap na si PSC, and kudos to them na talagang sinusuportahan nila lahat ng members ng POC, So para sa akin, I think the general public really should understand the plight of elite athletes, that they have very high standards that they need to maintain. And this is one of the things that I realized with Hidilyn when I talked to her first time in 2016. Imagine she won silver in the Rio Olympics 2016 without her support coach. I understand na papalit-palit pa nga ng coach si Heidi noon diba? Leading up to the Olympics, and yet she won silver. Diba? So we sat down with her, we identified her pain points. She said, "Sir, kailangan ko ng strength and conditioning coach. Sir, kailangan ko ng nutritionist. Sir, kailangan ko ng sports masseuse. Sir, kailangan ko ng ganito." So we sat down with her, we talked with her. Said, "Doesn't PSC provide this?" Sir, sagot po nila yung foreign coach, yung sports psychologist, si Doc Karen. And unfortunately, because of budget limitations, hindi nila kayang sagutin si SNC, si nutrition, and sports masseuse at that time, sagot nila PSC. So ito yung mga in-identify namin na, it's causing unnecessary headache to the athlete, na kailangan pa ba niyang isipin kung ano yung kailangan niyang kainin, diba? When she's losing, especially for a catch weight sport like weightlifting, diba? Talagang init ulo niya ni Heidi. Nakita ko yan sa Asian Games Init ulo niyan. Tapos, iisipin pa ba niya kung sinong SNC yung kukunin? Paano kung hindi niya trip yung SNC na provided ng PSC? And we have to understand na yung SNC ng PSC, ang dami namang sports na hinahandle, hindi pwedeng matutukan. So, ito yung na-realize ko na if you really want the athlete to perform well, you have to give them the necessary support talaga. And that's where MVPSF comes in. And I think there was an article done by the coach, si Mr. Laffertino, yung coach ni EJ Ubiel, na talagang kinwantify niya how much it costs to win to win a medal in the Olympics.
Yes. I remember that, yes.
Yeah, and it's relatively affordable. Sabi niya gano'n, di ba? Pero, and that's just one athlete. It's just one athlete. So, basically, si Heidi, sorry to say this, pero para siyang pilot test namin sa framework na yon, na if you really want the elite athlete to deliver, to perform, to always be at their best, you give them the support that they need, no? And please, no, I hope people really don't bash them for asking for more, because that's what they need. And in fairness to Heidi, Coach Julius, Coach Kao, and the rest of her members of Team HD, they're very transparent on how they spend the money. So, minsan nga na ako na-overwhelm ako, daming resibong binibigay sa akin. Sabi ko, sige, wag muna. Don't give me receipts muna, keep it. Let's wait until matapos yung Olympics and then let's do an accounting. But not now. Just finish the Olympics and focus on that. So it's more of a realization for me na you want them to perform, like high-flying executives of big corporations, you give them the support they need. Okay? Wag lang kotse, hindi ako siguro kotse, pero you give them financial support. That's all they need. That's all they're asking.
Yun, thank you. It's so nice to hear it's so nice to hear yung passionate support talaga from the private sector, because like I said, it's really gonna be important. Tsaka lang yan, Hidilyn, yung mga nangbabash na mga athletes na humihingi ng tulong, yun yung mga hindi pa nakakapanood ng atletang yun ba yung mga hindi pa nakakapanood ng mga podium na kinakanta yung national anthem mo na nasa podium ka. Imposible kung naka-experience ka ng ganyan, hindi ka talaga magbabash ng athletes. Iba yung feeling, iba yung moral na dinadala sa mga tao, iba yung inspirasyon na binibigay sa tao, di ba? So, lang yan yung mga bashers na yan. Coach Julius muna. Doon tayo, Coach J. Like I said, isa sa mga favorite resources ko sa mga newbie na katulad ko na hindi nakakaintindi ng weightlifting, for the benefit of our watchers and our listeners sa Sports IQ din na hindi rin ganun ka-familiar sa weightlifting. Meron tayong we're very much aware of yung mga personal bests ng mga athletes, di ba? Nakikita natin yung we know their numbers, we know their how do you make that up? Now, when you look at ito yung target na this is the target for the gold. How do you make that up between leading into the Olympics, and how does that demoralize, or does that even make you more inspired to yan yung target natin, let's go after that?
I think it's more of a motivator, right? Because I think like if we limit ourselves as to what our best is, what we think this is the best this person is, or this is the best that the athlete can achieve, you tend to get complacent, right? You get comfortable where you're at. And I think having that higher goal, or just kind of figuring out like, okay, I think you can hit this, because if you work with your athlete long enough, you know that what they can achieve. And it's just you can set the standard for them, because what they believe is not necessarily what they can actually achieve, right? Sometimes it's more. So you just have to give that mental drive. You just want to give them those goals to achieve, because at the end of the day, it gives them the motivation to work for it. And if you set the standard high enough, you will start to see that even with Hidilyn, for example, she's hitting PRs, personal records, at this late stage of her career. And this was unheard of in the last how many years? But
Mhm.
once she's really adjusted to the training program, the nutrition, the mental mindset with her psychologist, when the team is like in all gears and everything comes together, and you see exponential reach, you'll see her reach her goals, and we've hit PRs that she's never hit, lifetime PRs at her new body weight. So just you'll know what they can hit based on how they move in training. If you've been working with your athlete long enough, you just know that this is a number that they can hit based on how they recover, how they do in training. A lot of the indicators in training kind of can tell what she can put on the platform. So it's really just motivation for them to want to do better.
All right. We're just gonna take a short break, and when we come back, we're gonna ask Hidilyn her favorite Olympic moments. Kasi ano we've watched you grow, Hidilyn, from the youngest, one of the youngest sa Team Philippines, and now the veteran Team Philippines. So we're gonna revisit, parang nostalgia naman tayo ng konti when we return. Okay? So we'll be back after this.